Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. My name is Charlie. I created this. Here we go. So welcome back to part 2. Today we are going to do some detailing. This video is a little bit longer, if you'll notice, about 5 minutes longer. But don't stress, don't worry, it will be fine. So here we go. It pretty much picks up from where we left off in terms of fitting in the tram behind the main facade. And once again, I am sat on good old creaky. So have fun listening to that. I can only apologise, and I cannot guarantee that there won't be any burps today. Anyway, we are building pretty much the kind of main area. So I wanted this area to be somewhere that was going to take you to like a different place, if that makes sense. Almost like a portal, but not a portal. And I felt that hotels, in looking at other theme parks, I felt that a hotel would probably be the best way forward. I felt that it was the most kind of grand way of getting the message across that there's something there, and in a way of doing it that could easily hide a huge chunk of the main skyline in the park. So that was definitely something that needed to kind of happen. And originally I was going to do it with nature, and I'm sure you've seen some screenshots. That's of the test park, I should mention. So I built a test that I was originally going to use, but I decided I also didn't film any of that, so I kind of had to go back and give it a refilm. So which is why we're here. But this is just essentially me not necessarily copying it, because I don't have it directly next to me. I don't have any concept pictures. I'm just doing it off of my own mind, but it is coming together for what you're going to see. And I will actually use some of the facades that I've built previously that you've seen online already, in creating kind of the bigger or the further out skyline and sight lines for, like peep level sort of gameplay. But for now, I think it pretty much works. So, and as you can see here, so that pathway initially was going to be a big kind of walkway. And to be honest with you, I'll be completely honest, right? I've never been to Universal Studios, unfortunately. I would love to go one day. But I have never been. I've only aspired to go, and I've only aspired through YouTube videos, I guess you could say, and as much research as you possibly can, because I would love to work there one day. So essentially, this is me kind of just going with what feels natural from my kind of reference images in terms of the wider images, like the wider kind of footprint of the park. Because again, I do have concept pictures, but they're not there for kind of infrastructure. They're there for themed design. So for me, it was pretty kind of straightforward building all of the facades and all of that big kind of like pageantry kind of fantasy area, sci-fi sort of vibe, but everything else behind it is a bit of a blank. But I'm getting there, I would say. And in this video, well, you're about to see that kind of go out a bit more. So again, just basic infrastructure work, filling out the plaza underneath the hotel, because that's really the most important bit. And I'm laying all of the groundwork, and then I'm just building in the walls here. So it's pretty straightforward. And I'm probably sure you're wondering that, well, what's going on with the paths there? They do have alterations, sorry, not altercations, could you imagine? They just get up and start fighting each other. But no, this is pretty just kind of basic. And again, I edit the pathways through to what would I find that a lot of Planet Coaster creators do this in terms of just having kind of like one continuous plaza, and that works. Do you know, don't get me wrong, it really works, but your peeps will kind of intersect through the walls, and I like to kind of go that extra mile of just refining the pavements if it means to say I have to kind of take anything up or anything, just to kind of give you that gameplay where people are actually using, say, an archway for an archway reason and not walking through the walls, even if it is just the slightest gap, which is why I want smaller path stamps, particularly deleting stamps, because I think we should be able to get into those really minute details with tiny stamps, or smaller stamps anyway. But it's allowing not only your people but you as well as the player, if you walk down in first person perspective, to actually almost feel as if what you've built is actually a building in the game, because you're obstructed by walking. It's such a minute feature that doesn't necessarily need that much thought, but I do it because I overthink. So here is where we extend out the plaza. It is pretty straightforward. I originally used stamps for this kind of system, but for some reason in the game, I don't know if it's just me, but for some reason stamps take up a percentage, particularly on console, of your kind of footprint of the park, which means that car parks can be built, but they have to be built in a very, very condensed way, if anything. And at that, we're talking like, you know, though if it were real life, it would be the people who really have to park as close as they can to the park, rather than those who, say, could just park on the outside and get a tram in. Do you know what I mean? So we don't have that level of detail, unfortunately, but I feel like I make do with what I've got. Obviously, it's not finished, and it pretty much will come together like right now, as you can see. But I think just for kind of temporary stuff, at least, this was kind of the best way forward, just to kind of get that footprint. Because again, I haven't let anybody in to the park as of yet, so I haven't actually tested any of the gameplay. But what you're going to see today is pretty much what I've built. And then in a couple of episodes, maybe at the end of the series, I might open it. I don't know. The game's kind of economy structure really doesn't necessarily accommodate for that. So what I've noticed is that excuse me, that you could build huge parks and have them closed the whole time you build it like real life, and then open it, but you're starting with no ratings, no kind of almost fame in the game for your parks because nobody's visited it. So you end up operating at a bigger loss than you do actually playing the game and making profit in your parks, which is something I've only just realized how to do. It's actually pretty straightforward when you realize what's going on with the game, and I might do a video on that, just explaining that, because again, it can be quite confusing. And like I said, I've been playing this game now religiously for 6 months, and when I say religiously, I mean like every day. But it's only just now occurred to me that that's how you can function in the game with making kind of money, I guess, if you're someone that plays with those types of features. I definitely don't, but it's something to keep my eye on in case I change my mind, and I'm very indecisive at times, so yeah. Anyway, here we go. So this is how I detailed the main structure, and I really wanted you to see this because for some, I think from a distance it can look like quite complicated effects, when realistically it's just putting some lights down in strategic areas and lighting them up, because now that we have that like possibility where we can turn lights on and off, I did not think that we were going to get that feature for loads of lights. And I'm not saying all of the lights, because we don't have all of the lights like that. I don't necessarily think we need them like that either, especially as you just saw there. Some of them really do what they need to do on the tin. They could be a bit more saturated. That's just me. I'm picky, okay? But it is what it is, I guess. In comparison, though, you will notice that the lights that I'm using here versus the lights above it and beneath it are almost on different levels. So maybe that's something to look at. I don't know. I just like the look of it either way. And during the day, actually keeping those lights in place allowed like an additional layer of detail because it kind of created this false window edge. We're also creating a facade here, and I feel the need to keep reminding myself of that because as you can see here, obviously it looks like a huge building. This, in comparison to people, is pretty big, and it is probably on the same level as like Tower of Terror in terms of like height when you're down at person perspective. So it's probably a little bit too big, but you'll see that it just only gets bigger because for some reason, you know what I mean when I say like creative inspiration strikes you like a strike of thunder, or like a bolt of thunder, lightning, sorry. And that's pretty much what happened here. And let me tell you, when the whole thing's done and when you've seen it, it's huge. It's huge now. I've only just finished it, and it's taken me like 3 days to do so because of all of the kind of detail and the intricacy of it too. But as you can see, when you step back from the kind of close-ups, you really kind of get a feel for that, you know, lit up nighttime effect. And it does look huge, which is the kind of point. It's above people, and it's not going to be what people, unfortunately, at this moment can interact with. So I thought, do you know what? Let's really kind of mess around with forced perspective. I love it. And I think it's really fun too. And here it really pays off. So I recommend anyone, especially on console too, to kind of mess around with this idea, because seeing as we can't build these huge buildings, we can really kind of go in with certain details, especially, well, you'll notice there in the kind of bottom bar that I've got that little kind of lit up or like illuminated percentage. That's actually the complexity meter bar, and I have it there just for my own peace of mind. So there was one time where I turned it off because I felt it was making me too paranoid about placing things down, to the point where I was just looking at a field and thought, well, yeah, this is a really detailed park, and it was like, no, it's a field. So I turned it off and built this huge thing. It turned out that it almost broke my platform or my console because of how big it was. The amount of pieces that I used was ridiculous, and yeah, it really taught me that I need to be careful. I have now corrected that and really kind of given Planet Coaster 2, I guess, a wide berth, in the sense that I've gone from thinking that the game could handle certain amounts to being completely surprised and almost mind blown, because I've completely underestimated the power of the game and what it can handle on the console. So yeah, let me tell you now, console players, you can do a lot. Do not be held back, okay? This is what I can do. This is what you can do. Pretty straightforward though, I'm not going to lie at this moment, so nothing too kind of crazy. Anyway, we are now extending this kind of area here. I wanted there to be, I realised that you could easily walk through the main gates of the park and we could call it a day, but that's just not realistic in terms of the capacity that I'm aiming for with this park. It would also be a huge safety hazard if it was real life, but I was like, do you know what, we're gonna have to figure it out, and we're gonna have to figure out a way of doing something different. So it was quite simple, just extending 2 kind of squares of the plaza on either side, and eventually in another episode at some point maybe we'll be able to kind of see that. What am I doing? Oh, I think I might be taking screenshots. Yeah. So a lot of my footage is filmed in different days over a consecutive. I'm sure as many of you who play this or who make your own content, if any of you are watching, you'll understand. this footage alone was comprised over, I think, 2 days. So there's a little bit choppy and changing, and I did cut out a lot of the nighttime stuff because you couldn't really see it. I don't know why I filmed at night, but I'm not doing that again, so don't worry. Anyway, I'm working on the interior. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier with the path system. So I've gone in and corrected all of it for where I need people to go, or where I want people to be even just able to walk. But I've noticed that the UI people can sometimes be a little bit crazy. They can also spawn in places that you don't even have access for them to spawn in, and they then cry at you because they want you to save you. I've had that one too many times. It's hilarious, don't get me wrong, because they're just waving in the air in the middle of nowhere, and I'm like, how did you get there? Who did it? Go on, come on. Who did it? But anyway, we're building now the kind of interior. So I have laid down a huge plaza there, or like a huge pathway that's all a mix and match of just kind of filling in the gaps. It does kind of look cool, I'm not gonna lie, so I might keep it the way it is, but essentially the idea is pretty straightforward in the sense that I've laid down a plaza with paths. That allows me to place down things like restaurants. That also allows me to place down benches and the kind of necessary equipment that we need in order to make it functional. And then I go in and kind of, for my own peace of mind, just mark out with a completely different path colour where the actual restaurant's going to be. And then I go in around it, whether that be on the outside, whether that be on the inside, and I kind of correct all of the paths around it. So there is actually a small gap from the wall of now what will be the restaurant, or one of the restaurants in this space. You can't actually walk through them. You have to walk either, well, like in real life, you have to walk around them. So yeah, that again is what you can do if you just give it a little bit, or just, fiddle around with it a little bit. But like I say, it's pretty straightforward and it's pretty easy, especially for console folks out there. That's also why I'm making these videos, because I want to see more console folk, come and kind of build and show us what they've got. Anyway, so the hotel, I'm in two minds, because I want to do this, which is what I'm building right now, the Senate Hotel with a big sign and stuff, and make it like, mod and like sci-fi and stuff. But given what I have just built for this and where now we're at with what you're going to see, I think it is bigger than a hotel, and I think it's borderline a city. I didn't intend for that to happen because obviously, whoops. But nonetheless, it has been completed, and I think it's going to be more of a city in the long run that you walk through, because realistically, in these sci-fi kind of films, or in these kind of futuristic films, you see it all the time. There's huge plazas with loads of like floating kind of maps and stuff, and all of the bits and bobs that you need. Anyway, here we go. So this is one of the restaurants that I really kind of wanted to talk about specifically. This is called Pizza Planet. Now, one of the ways that, and yes, it is inspired by Toy Story, okay? Essentially, what I've done with this restaurant in order to make it kind of semi-functional, well, I mean, it's entirely functional and your people can go in there, but one of the ways that I've found that makes it more attractive for your guests in the parks that you build is that you need to give some free options or alternatives. If they were like real things, that would never happen unless it were like, a seriously hot day, for example, and they gave you a bottle of water. But I just think that it makes these restaurants or these facilities have so much more life when you've got just some free options for your peeps, especially if you're creative like myself, or playing on a kind of unlimited sort of map with no financial repercussions. Give them some free options, because your areas will get significantly more populated with just people and just a bit of traffic, and sometimes I think that's what you need. You just need to give it a bit of encouragement. Anyway, we're getting to the end of the video now. If you aren't, or if you've made it this far, I guess. But yeah, we're building now, and we're laying out the kind of one of the main shops that will be underneath the city. A gift shop for us, but amongst the people who live on this planet. Because remember, we're building a planet. We're not just building a park. But the people that would go here would probably not shop here, because it's just a gift shop. Anyway, no need to... I've put so much thought into it, it's crazy. But I'm just building the outside facade, because I love those types of indoor plaza sort of vibes. But yeah, we're pretty much done. So I literally just scared myself then, because I thought my recording software was going to give me like no more time to record my audio. Never mind. So I'm just using the glass windows there. I love the glass pieces in this game. They originally weren't as good as they are now, and let me tell you, they were worth the wait. I will say they do not have any kind of shadow, whether it be like a color or whatever. I understand that. Also because I feel like that would actually blow up my Xbox. But I wish we had it, or just kind of something. But I'll take what we've got in terms of actually when you've got this kind of... So this turns into an indoor area. So even having some color on the glass is probably not the best, because you're not going to see it anyway. But see, there it is. As if by magic. Because that black colour on the glass, or the tint on the glass, I should say, is a brilliant kind of... It's almost dark enough that you can't necessarily see all the way through it. And I really, really like that, because it's really realistic, I think. That you can get glass that is like that, and especially in theme parks like this, you will see this kind of vibe. But yeah, you know, here we go into the screenshots then. Right now, there we go. So it's exactly the same as before, just because there's nothing really kind of gone on that's too crazy at this moment in time. But stay tuned, because it is all about to change. Anyway, I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and I hope you appreciate the better audio. Anyway, goodbye, folks. You know, I actually forgot to mention that, you know, you should probably like and subscribe and comment too, because, you know, why not? Smile.